The VP fired me for leaving at 5 p.m., not knowing I had spent my free time buying up the outstanding debt of the company through a shell corporation. That's what I told my lawyer when he asked how I ended up owning Meridian Industrial Supply. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Victor Draven. I'm 55 years old, and for the past 19 years, I've been the corporate controller at Meridian. That's a fancy title for the guy who knows where every single dollar goes. Every payment, every receivable, every line of credit, every covenant on every loan agreement. All of it lived in my head. Before Meridian, I spent 8 years in the Navy as a financial specialist. Submarines, mostly. You learn a lot about systems when you're underwater for months at a time. You learn that the guy who understands how everything connects is the guy who keeps everyone alive. I brought that same approach to Meridian. When I started, we were a $40 million regional distributor with cash flow problems and a banking relationship held together with duct tape. I restructured our debt, renegotiated vendor terms, and built a financial reporting system that let us see problems 6 months before they hit. By year 10, we were doing $180 million. By year 15, $340 million. I was there when the founder, old Mr. Harrington, had his first heart attack. I sat with him in the hospital while he signed emergency authorization papers. His wife brought me coffee and called me the only one Gerald trusts with the numbers. I missed my son's high school graduation because we were closing a refinancing deal that saved the company $2.3 million annually. My wife, ex-wife now, handed me divorce papers 8 months later. Said I was married to spreadsheets, not her. She wasn't wrong. The alimony is $1,400 a month. My son Marcus lives with her in Connecticut. I see him twice a month when I can make the drive. He's 24 now, working his first real job. Still calls me for advice about his 401k. That's who I am. The quiet guy in the corner office on the 3rd floor, surrounded by filing cabinets and monitors showing real-time cash positions. The guy who comes in at 7 a.m. and leaves at 5 p.m. every single day. Because I learned a long time ago that sustainable pace beats burnout. The guy nobody notices until something breaks. 3 years ago, Mr. Harrington finally retired. His health wasn't what it used to be, and his kids had no interest in the business. So the board brought in outside leadership. That's when Bradley Whitfield arrived. Bradley was 38 years old with an MBA from Columbia and a resume full of transformational leadership roles at companies I'd never heard of. He had the kind of tan you get from golf vacations, teeth that were too white to be natural, and a handshake that lasted 2 seconds too long. His first week, he called an all-hands meeting. Meridian is at an inflection point, he announced, pacing the conference room like a TED Talk speaker. We need to shed our legacy thinking and embrace an agile, always-on culture. The companies that win in the next decade won't be the ones that punch a clock. They'll be the ones that hustle. I sat in the back, watching. The younger employees nodded along. The veterans exchanged glances. After the meeting, Bradley stopped me in the hallway. Victor, right? The controller? That's right. He smiled that too white smile. You've been here a while. Good. I'll need your institutional knowledge during the transition, but I also need you to understand. Things are going to change around here. The old ways aren't going to cut it anymore. I nodded. I understand. Good man. That was the last civil conversation we had. Within 2 months, Bradley had instituted what he called commitment metrics. If you left before 7 p.m., it was noted. If you didn't answer emails on weekends, it was noted. If you took your full vacation days, it was noted. I kept leaving at 5 p.m. If you've ever had a boss who confused presence with productivity, you know what this feels like. Hit that like button and subscribe if this story resonates with you. The first time Bradley called me into his office about it, he was leaning back in his chair with his feet on his desk. The desk that used to be Mr. Harrington's. Victor, I've noticed you're not putting in the hours. I arrive at 7. I leave at 5. That's 10 hours. That's clock punching, Victor. That's an hourly worker mentality. At the leadership level, we need people who are hungry. My work is done when I leave. Every report, every reconciliation, every projection, all on time, all accurate. He waved his hand. It's not about the work. It's about the optics. It's about culture. When the controller leaves at 5, it tells everyone else it's okay to coast. I see. I need you to be a team player here. I'll think about that. I kept leaving at 5 p.m. What Bradley didn't know, what nobody knew, was what I did between 5 p.m. and midnight. 3 months into Bradley's tenure, I noticed something in our financial statements. The company had taken on significant debt 2 years before his arrival, and that debt had recently been sold. This happens sometimes. Banks package loans and sell them to other institutions, private equity firms, distressed debt funds, but this particular debt had been sold at a steep discount, 63 cents on the dollar. That told me something important. Whoever bought it didn't think Meridian was a safe bet. I started digging, quietly, after hours. The debt had ended up with a small fund called Granite Peak Capital. I made some calls, old Navy buddies who'd gone into finance. One of them knew a guy who knew a guy. Granite Peak was looking to sell. They'd taken a bath on some other investments and needed liquidity. I called my lawyer that night, Tom Ellis. We'd served together on the USS Pittsburgh. I want to buy distressed corporate debt, I said, through a structure that isn't traceable to me. Tom was quiet for a moment. How much are we talking? $14.2 million face value. I can probably get it for 9. You have $9 million, Victor? I have my retirement accounts, home equity, and I know some people who might want a piece of a very interesting opportunity. Tom laughed. You're serious. I'm always serious about numbers, Tom. It took 4 months to set up. Tom created a Delaware LLC called Blackwater Holdings, owned by a trust, administered by a management company in Wyoming. 3 layers between my name and the debt. I liquidated my 401k, took the penalty, cashed out my brokerage accounts, took a second mortgage on my house, called in every favor I'd accumulated over 19 years in business. My old friend Walter Miller, a retired CFO I'd helped through a nasty audit 15 years ago, put in $2 million. Rachel Ellis, Tom's sister, a surgeon who'd always wanted to make real money, added another $1 million. A few others. On March 15th, Blackwater Holdings acquired the outstanding senior secured debt of Meridian Industrial Supply for $8.7 million. I now controlled $14.2 million in loans that Meridian was legally obligated to repay. Loans secured by virtually every asset the company owned, and nobody at Meridian had any idea. I kept coming in at 7. I kept leaving at 5. I kept my head down and watched Bradley Whitfield slowly strangle the company I'd spent 2 decades building. The confrontation came on a Tuesday, 4:47 p.m. I was packing my briefcase when Bradley appeared in my doorway. HR Director Susan Miller standing behind him with a tablet pressed to her chest like a shield. Victor, got a minute? I looked at my watch. 13 minutes, actually. Bradley's jaw tightened. We need to talk about your future at Meridian. All right. He stepped inside, Susan following like a shadow. She closed the door. I've given you every opportunity to adapt to our culture, Bradley began. Every chance to show you're committed to where this company is going, and you've refused. Every single time. I've done my job. Your job is what I say it is, and I say it includes being present when leadership needs you, being available, being part of the team. I see. Bradley leaned forward. Here's the reality, Victor. You're a legacy employee. You've been here so long, you think that earns you special treatment. It doesn't. The company has evolved. You haven't. He slid a folder across my desk. We're terminating your employment, effective immediately. 2 weeks severance, which is generous given your attitude. Susan will escort you to collect your personal items. Your systems access has already been revoked. I looked at the folder. I didn't open it. That's your choice, I said. Bradley blinked. Excuse me? I said, that's your choice. You're not going to argue? Threaten to sue? Tell me about your 19 years? I stood up, straightened my tie, picked up my briefcase. No. Susan stepped forward nervously. Mr. Draven, if you'll follow me. I walked past Bradley without looking at him. At the door, I paused. Bradley. He looked up, a smug smile already forming. You should read the company's loan covenants sometime. Section 8, Paragraph 4, the acceleration clause. His smile faltered. What? Enjoy your evening. I walked out of the building at exactly 5 p.m. If you've ever had a boss who thought they could bully you into submission without understanding what you actually brought to the table, hit that like button and subscribe. The drive home that Tuesday evening was the most peaceful commute I'd had in 3 years. No anxiety about tomorrow's reports. No mental calculations about cash positions. No rehearsing conversations with vendors or board members. Just the sound of rain on the windshield and the knowledge of what was coming. I pulled into my garage at 5:47 p.m. My Labrador, Chester, met me at the door like he always did. But this time, instead of the distracted pat on the head before I retreated to my home office, I sat down on the kitchen floor and let him climb into my lap. Big changes coming, boy. He licked my face. Dogs know. I poured myself 3 fingers of Woodford Reserve, not the daily drinker, the bottle I kept for occasions, and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. The first email went to Tom Ellis at 6:15 p.m. Execute Phase 2. Target date, Monday, April 3rd. Notify the board directly. I want Bradley to hear about it from them, not from us. Tom's response came in 11 minutes. Confirmed. Documents ready. This is going to be beautiful. The second email went to Walter Miller. It's happening. Thank you for trusting me. His response. I trusted you with my company's books during the worst audit of my career. This was easy. Give 'em hell, Victor. Then I closed my laptop, finished my bourbon, and slept better than I had in years. Wednesday morning, I woke up at 7 a.m. out of habit, made coffee, read the Wall Street Journal, took Chester for a long walk through the neighborhood, called my son Marcus. Dad, it's 8 in the morning. Aren't you at work? Not anymore. I got fired yesterday. Silence. Then, what? Dad, are you okay? What happened? I'm fine, son. Better than fine, actually. I'll explain everything soon. Just wanted you to hear it from me first. Do you need money? I have some saved up. I can... Marcus. I smiled. Trust me. I'm going to be fine. Meanwhile, at Meridian, the chaos was already beginning. I know this because Susan Miller, the HR director who'd stood behind Bradley during my termination, called me Thursday afternoon. Victor, I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I thought you should know. Bradley's been in his office screaming at people since yesterday morning. Is that so? The quarterly close is in 2 weeks. Nobody can find the reconciliation templates. The banking contacts are asking for reports that don't exist. And the new auditors sent over a request list, and Bradley told them to figure it out themselves. She paused. Victor, nothing is documented. Everything was in your head. I'm aware. He's blaming you, saying you sabotaged the systems on your way out. I didn't touch anything. I simply left at 5 p.m., as requested. Susan laughed. It was a bitter sound. Half the accounting department is threatening to quit. Bradley told them if they couldn't handle the pressure, they weren't Meridian material. That sounds like Bradley. Victor, she lowered her voice. What's going to happen? I don't know, Susan. I'm just a legacy employee who couldn't adapt. I hung up. Friday brought more calls. Jim Patterson from Accounts Payable, Maria Gonzalez from the Treasury team, even old Mr. Harrington's former executive assistant Dorothy, who'd stayed on after his retirement. Victor, it's falling apart over here. Bradley doesn't understand the covenant reporting requirements. He missed the submission deadline to First National yesterday, and they're threatening to call a technical default. That's unfortunate. Can you help? Can you come back, even as a consultant? I could talk to the board. Dorothy, I appreciate the call, but I'm not available. The weekend passed quietly. I grilled steaks on Saturday, watched a baseball game on Sunday, took Chester to the dog park. Monday morning, April 3rd, 9 a.m. Tom Ellis walked into Meridian's headquarters carrying a leather briefcase and a certified letter. At 9:15 a.m., he was escorted to the main conference room, where an emergency board meeting had been convened at his request. I know what happened next because Tom recorded it. Legal in that state with single-party consent. Good morning. My name is Thomas Ellis. I represent Blackwater Holdings, LLC. As of March 15th of this year, Blackwater Holdings acquired the outstanding senior secured debt of Meridian Industrial Supply, totaling $14.2 million in principal and accrued interest. Bradley's voice confused. What is this? Who authorized this meeting? A board member. Sounded like Richard Calloway, the chairman. Cut him off. We authorized it, Bradley. Sit down. Tom continued. As I'm sure you're aware, Meridian's loan agreements contain certain covenants, financial reporting requirements, debt service coverage ratios, liquidity minimums. My client has been monitoring the company's compliance with these covenants very carefully. Silence in the room. As of last Friday, Meridian failed to submit its quarterly covenant compliance certificate to First National Bank, or rather, to Blackwater Holdings, which now stands in First National's position. This constitutes an event of default under Section 8, Paragraph 4 of the credit agreement. Bradley again. This is ridiculous. We can file the paperwork today. It was an administrative oversight. Mr. Whitfield. Tom's voice was ice. Please stop talking. I've listened to that recording 6 times. That moment never gets old. Under the terms of the credit agreement, an event of default entitles the lender to accelerate all outstanding obligations. Blackwater Holdings is hereby exercising that right. The full $14.2 million is now due and payable immediately. Richard Calloway's voice strained. Mr. Ellis, surely there's room for negotiation here. We can cure the default, work out a payment plan. My client is prepared to negotiate. In fact, my client has a specific proposal. Papers shuffling. Blackwater Holdings will forgive the outstanding debt in its entirety in exchange for a conversion to equity, specifically 51% of Meridian's common stock. Chaos erupted. Bradley shouting about hostile takeovers, board members talking over each other. Someone, I think it was Dorothy, gasping audibly. Tom waited for the noise to die down. There's one additional condition, non-negotiable. The immediate termination of Bradley Whitfield as vice president, effective today. No severance, no consulting arrangement, no continued involvement of any kind. Bradley's voice cracked. You can't do this. I have a contract. I have rights. Who the hell is behind this? I'm glad you asked, Mr. Whitfield. The sound of a door opening. I walked in at exactly 9:47 a.m. I'd worn my best suit, navy blue, conservative cut. The silver pen Mr. Harrington had given me after the first heart attack was in my breast pocket. I didn't say anything at first, just walked to the head of the table, Bradley's usual seat, and remained standing. Bradley's face went white, literally white. I've seen that expression described in books, but I'd never witnessed it until that moment. The blood draining, the jaw going slack. Victor? Richard Calloway stood up. Victor, you're behind this? Good morning, Richard. Good morning, everyone. I looked at Bradley, held his gaze. Hello, Bradley. You! He couldn't form words. You can't. This is illegal. This is fraud. This is capitalism, Bradley. The kind they should have taught you at Columbia. I sat down. For 19 years, I managed this company's finances. I knew every loan covenant, every banking relationship, every vulnerability in our capital structure. When our debt was sold to Granite Peak, I saw an opportunity. When you decided I was legacy thinking that needed to be shed, I took it. Bradley stood up, knocking his chair backward. I'm calling our lawyers. I'm calling the SEC. You're calling no one. Richard Calloway's voice was cold. Sit down, Bradley. Or rather, don't. Because you're done here. He turned to me. Victor, if we agree to the equity conversion and Bradley's termination, what are your intentions for the company? To run it properly, to restore sustainable practices, to rebuild the relationships Bradley has spent 3 years destroying. I paused. And to promote the people who kept this place running, despite his leadership. Not because of it. The board voted unanimously, 7-0. Bradley abstained, or rather wasn't given the opportunity to vote. Security arrived at 10:15 a.m. The same security guard, Pete Donaldson, who had watched Susan escort me out 13 days earlier. Mr. Whitfield. Pete's voice was professionally neutral. I need to escort you to collect your personal belongings. Bradley turned to me one last time. His face had gone from white to red. A vein pulsed in his forehead. You'll regret this. I have connections. I have lawyers. I'll destroy you. I leaned back in my chair. Bradley, I've spent my entire career understanding how numbers connect to power. You spent yours understanding how to talk about leadership without actually leading. One of us was always going to win this fight. I smiled. Now, please leave my building. I have work to do. The door closed behind him at 10:23 a.m. Tom caught my eye from across the table and nodded once. I poured myself a glass of water from the pitcher in the center of the table. My hands were steady. They'd been steady through submarine emergencies. They were steady now. Richard Calloway cleared his throat. Victor, I owe you an apology. The board should have seen what Bradley was doing. We should have intervened. You're intervening now. That's what matters. What do you need from us? I pulled a folder from my briefcase. Inside were organizational charts, financial projections, and a detailed 90-day turnaround plan I'd developed over the past 2 weeks. I need your trust. And about 4 hours of your time to review the path forward. Dorothy appeared in the doorway with a coffee service. She was smiling. Mr. Draven, should I cancel Mr. Whitfield's afternoon meetings? Please, Dorothy, and call Susan Miller. Tell her she still has a job, and I'd like to see her in my office at 2 p.m. to discuss some changes to our HR policies. Yes, sir. The board meeting lasted until 3 p.m. By the end, I'd been formally installed as CEO and majority shareholder of Meridian Industrial Supply. My first official act was to send a company-wide email. Effective immediately, Meridian is returning to sustainable business practices. Normal working hours will be respected. Vacation time will be honored. Performance will be measured by results, not by hours spent performing busyness. Those who built this company will be recognized. Those who tried to tear it down are no longer with us. We have work to do. Let's do it properly. Victor Draven, CEO. That evening, I stayed late for the first time in years. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. At 8 p.m., I sat in my new office, the corner office on the executive floor, the one that used to be Mr. Harrington's, and looked out at the city lights. Chester was with me. I'd brought him in that afternoon. Nobody complained. I poured 3 fingers of bourbon from a bottle I'd bought to keep in the credenza. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Dad, just read about it online. Holy shit. You're a legend, I smiled. Typed back, just a numbers guy who understood the system. 3 dots appeared. Then, can I come visit this weekend? I want to hear the whole story. I'd like that, son. I set the phone down and scratched Chester behind the ears. Somewhere across town, Bradley Whitfield was probably calling lawyers, drafting angry LinkedIn posts, trying to spin the narrative. It wouldn't matter. The numbers didn't lie. The documents were airtight. And the people who actually ran Meridian were finally being led by someone who understood what they did. Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. It doesn't threaten or bluster or pound the table. Sometimes it just reads the fine print, buys the debt, waits for the default, and walks into the boardroom at 9:47 a.m. with a silver pen in its pocket and 19 years of patience behind it. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and ring that notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. 6 months later, Meridian Industrial Supply posted its strongest quarterly earnings in company history, not because of some dramatic turnaround strategy, not because of layoffs or restructuring or any of the buzzwords Bradley used to throw around, simply because the people who knew how to do their jobs were finally allowed to do them. I promoted Jim Patterson to VP of Finance. He'd been stuck in accounts payable for 8 years because Bradley thought he lacked executive presence. Jim restructured our vendor payment terms and saved us $1.2 million in the first quarter alone. Maria Gonzalez became treasurer. She'd been quietly managing our cash positions while Bradley took credit for optimizing liquidity. Within 3 months, she'd negotiated a new credit facility at 140 basis points below our previous rate. Susan Miller stayed on as HR director. Her first initiative was dismantling every single one of Bradley's commitment metrics. Her second was implementing a flexible work policy that reduced turnover by 34%. The company didn't need transformation. It needed someone to stop breaking what already worked. Walter Miller called me in May. "Victor, I just got the quarterly distribution from Blackwater Holdings. This is more than I made in my last 3 years as CFO. The company's performing. You took a risk on me. This is what happens when risks pay off. I took a risk on numbers. You don't lose bets when Victor Draven is counting the cards." I laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." It was meant as one. Rachel's already asking if there are any other interesting opportunities you're looking at. Tell Rachel to be patient. Good deals take time to develop. The first Sunday in June, Marcus drove down from Connecticut. We sat on my back deck, Chester sprawled between our chairs, watching the sun set over the tree line. I'd grilled ribeyes. The good ones, from the butcher on Main Street, not the grocery store. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything?" "When did you know? Like, when did you decide you were going to do all this?" I took a sip of bourbon. Thought about it. There wasn't a single moment. It was gradual. I watched Bradley dismantle everything I'd spent 2 decades building, and at first I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore. He was the boss. The board chose him. Maybe I really was legacy thinking. But then I heard him in the hallway one day. He was talking to one of the board members, Richard Calloway. I was in the supply closet grabbing printer paper. Door was cracked. Sound carried. Marcus leaned forward. "What did he say?" "He said Victor's a relic, probably counting down to retirement. We just need to keep him docile until we can find a replacement who actually fits the culture. He's got alimony, a mortgage, a kid in his 20s who probably still needs help. He's not going anywhere." I paused. Let the memory settle. That was the moment. Not because he insulted me. I've been insulted before, but because he thought he understood me. Thought he had me figured out. Thought my obligations made me trapped. "What did you do?" I started staying late. Not at the office. At home. Researching. Planning. Running numbers. Building a structure that would let me buy the one thing Bradley never thought to protect. I smiled. His own vulnerability. Marcus shook his head slowly. 19 years of loyalty, and he thought you'd just take it. He confused compliance with submission. A lot of people make that mistake. We sat in silence for a while. Chester's tail thumped against the deck boards. Somewhere down the street, kids were playing, their voices carrying in the evening air. "Dad? Yeah? I'm proud of you. Not just because you won, because you waited, because you did it right." I looked at my son, 24 years old, working his first real job, calling me for advice about retirement accounts. "That means more than the corner office, Marcus. I want you to know that." He grinned. "I know, but the corner office is pretty cool too." I laughed. First real laugh in longer than I could remember. Bradley Whitfield filed a lawsuit in July. Wrongful termination, tortious interference, fraud. The complaint was 47 pages of desperate accusations and legal theories that wouldn't survive a motion to dismiss. Tom Ellis called me when he received the filing. He's representing himself. Couldn't find a firm willing to take the case on contingency. That's not surprising. I'll have this thrown out within 60 days. But I wanted to give you the heads up. He might try to contact you directly. Let him try. Bradley never did contact me, but I heard through the grapevine that he'd posted a lengthy screed on LinkedIn about corporate raiders and disloyal employees and the death of American business ethics. It got 12 likes. 8 of them were from accounts with no profile pictures. His lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice in September. The judge's ruling was 4 pages long. The key sentence: plaintiff's allegations amount to nothing more than dissatisfaction with the legitimate exercise of contractual rights by a sophisticated creditor. Sophisticated creditor. I had that framed. The last time I saw Bradley was in October. I was having dinner at Morrison's, a steakhouse downtown where Meridian executives had been taking clients for 30 years. Corner booth, white tablecloth, the works. I was meeting with a potential acquisition target, a small manufacturer that would complement our distribution network perfectly. Bradley walked in with a woman I didn't recognize. He looked different, thinner, older. The tan had faded. The 2 white teeth seemed garish now, out of place on a face that had lost its practiced confidence. He saw me before the hostess could seat him. For a long moment, we just looked at each other across the restaurant. The ambient noise of clinking glasses and murmured conversations seemed to fade. I raised my bourbon glass, a small gesture, almost a toast. Bradley's face contorted. For a second, I thought he might come over, make a scene, give me the confrontation he'd been denied in the boardroom. Instead, he turned and walked out. The woman followed, confused, asking questions he didn't answer. The hostess approached my table, flustered. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Draven. I don't know what happened. He just left." "It's fine, Margaret. Some people find it hard to dine with their mistakes." She didn't understand. That was okay. December brought the annual company holiday party. First one in 4 years, Bradley had canceled them as unnecessary expenditures. I stood at the front of the main conference room. 200 employees gathered with drinks and plates of catered food, and gave a short speech. 19 years ago, I walked into this building as a numbers guy with submarine experience and a firm belief that sustainable practices beat short-term thinking. That belief has never wavered. It's been tested. It's been dismissed. It's been called legacy thinking by people who confused activity with achievement. Light laughter. But here's what I've learned. The people who actually build companies, the ones who show up every day, do their jobs well, and go home to their families, they're not relics. They're the foundation, and foundations don't need to roar to hold up the building. I raised my glass. To Meridian. To everyone who kept it standing when others tried to tear it down. And to the simple principle that competence, patience, and integrity will always outlast arrogance. The room raised their glasses. Merry Christmas. That night after the party, I sat in my office one last time before the holiday break. Chester was asleep on the leather couch I'd brought in. The one from Mr. Harrington's old study, which Dorothy had kept in storage. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Draven. This is Gerald Harrington. Dorothy gave me your personal number. I hope that's all right. I heard about everything that happened. I wanted to say, I knew I was right to trust you with the numbers. Merry Christmas. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, the pen you gave me is still in my pocket every day. Merry Christmas, sir. I poured the last of my bourbon, watched the city lights through the window, thought about submarines and spreadsheets and the years in between. Sometimes justice doesn't announce itself. It doesn't make speeches or demands or threats. Sometimes it just buys the debt, reads the covenants, waits for the moment when arrogance finally trips over its own assumptions. And then it walks into the boardroom at 9:47 a.m., sits down in the chair that used to belong to someone who understood nothing, and gets to work. Because when you've spent 19 years learning how everything connects, you don't just survive the betrayal. You own the outcome. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and ring that notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.